Welcome to the deep dive. So you're dreaming about that next big international trip, right? Maybe hitting the markets in Southeast Asia or, I don't know, hiking in New Zealand.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, the destination's picked, dates are set, and then that feeling hits. How do I actually get in?
Ah, yes. The paperwork dread.
Exactly. Required documents, visas, all the official stuff. It can feel, well, super confusing and honestly a bit stressful.
Totally. That feeling is pretty universal these days, I think. The times when just your passport was enough for lots of places, they're kind of fading. Governments are bringing in all these new rules, often digital ones, and they change all the time. It's genuinely hard to keep up.
And navigating that whole challenge is what we're diving into today. We've got some source material here from a website, Visasyst.com,
Okay.
and it looks like they offer services for visa processing, immigration consulting, that kind of thing.
Gotcha. So our mission here, as we unpack this, is basically to see what this source tells us about the kinds of documents you need now for different places. And, how a service like the one they describe tries to make that whole process simpler for you.
Right. So picture yourself, staring at some official government website, trying to decode if you need a visa or an ETA or an ETA.
Or some digital form you've never heard of.
Exactly. Just to get on the plane. That's the exact pain point this source seems to be talking about.
Okay, let's dig into this source material then, see what it says. So first up, how does this service actually say it can help travelers? On their site, Visasyst.com, under Get in Touch, they list a few options like simplified form, priority service, and embassy registration.
Okay, so simplified priority. Sounds like making it easier or faster somehow. And they have another section, how we can help you, right? It talks about comprehensive support, like from getting the visa documents sorted all the way to handling embassy appointments.
Right. And they also mention offering expert guidance. The idea is, helping you avoid the common mistakes or delays that can happen, plus that faster processing through those priority services you mentioned.
So they're sort of positioning themselves as your guide through all the bureaucracy.
Pretty much.
Their Why Choose Us bit highlights global expertise, saying they keep up with rules worldwide and personalized service, tailoring help to what you need.
And reliable support, too, focusing on accuracy, compliance, making sure everything's done on time.
Okay, so it paints a picture of like a one-stop shop to cut through all the confusion.
Yeah, that seems to be the goal. Now, we've seen what they say they offer. Let's look at why that help might be needed by digging into the specifics. The sheer variety of documents needed for different countries, just based on what the source lists. This is where it gets, well, really interesting because the requirements aren't just different. They fall into all these different categories now.
Okay, yeah. Let's start with maybe those electronic permissions you might need before you even go. Often for places where you wouldn't need a traditional visa stamp. Like for the United States, the source talks about two different things, ESA2 and the B1, B2 visitor visa.
Exactly. According to the site, ESA2, that's for people from specific visa waiver program countries. I think places like a lot of Europe, Australia, Japan. It lets you travel for tourism, business, or just transiting for up to 90 days without needing a full visa. It's basically a pre-travel check, an authorization.
Okay. And the B1, B2 visitor visa, then that's for people who don't qualify for the visa waiver program or maybe want to stay longer than 90 days.
That's right. Or if you're planning to do things that aren't allowed under the visa waiver program rules. So, yeah, two distinct paths depending on who you are and why you're going.
Got it. Okay. Heading north. Canada. The source mentions the Canada ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization.
Yep. And it says that's required for all visa-exempt foreign nationals who are flying to or even just transiting through Canada. So again, something you need before you fly if you don't need a visa.
And the UK has something new too, right? According to the source, the UK ETA, another electronic travel authorization.
Yes, that's needed for nationals from visa-exempt countries who are traveling without a visa. And you've got to apply online before you travel.
Okay, online beforehand. Are there exceptions?
Good question. The source does point out, that Irish citizens don't need it, and neither do people who already have a UK residence permit.
Right. Okay. Down under. New Zealand.
New Zealand also requires an NZETA, the New Zealand Electronic Travel Authority, again, for travelers coming from visa waiver countries.
So we're definitely seeing a pattern here, aren't we? Several big destinations bringing in these electronic pre-travel checks for visitors who don't need a full traditional visa.
It's exactly. It really looks like a trend. Governments wanting to do a sort of digital screening before people even get on the plane. Now, another category the source lists is electronic visas, where you actually apply for the visa itself online.
Okay.
India, for example. The source says it's mandatory for foreign nationals to apply for an e-visa online before they travel.
And Sri Lanka, too. It mentions needing an ETA, electronic travel authority, for tourism, business, or transit before you even enter.
Right. And in Sri Lanka's case, the source kind of describes it more like an actual electronic visa or permit process, maybe a bit different from just the authorization like the U.S. ESA or Canada ETA.
Interesting distinction.
And Cambodia offers a Cambodia e-visa. That's an electronic travel permit specifically for tourism, for people who normally need a visa to enter.
So these e-visas seem like online systems that are either replacing or maybe working alongside the old embassy visa applications?
That seems to be the idea, yeah, streamlining it online.
Okay, so we've got pre-travel authorizations, electronic visas. What else does the source list? These digital arrival and departure declarations.
Right. For Singapore, the source mentions the mandatory SG arrival card, required for all visitors.
And Malaysia, right next door.
Yeah, Malaysia requires the Malaysia digital arrival card for foreign visitors. These really seem like, digital versions of those paper landing cards you used to fill out.
Yeah, the customs or immigration forms. Makes sense. What about the Maldives?
The Maldives requires a Maldives Immigration Traveler Declaration. That's for anyone coming from abroad who isn't a Maldivian passport holder. Mandatory for all other foreign nationals.
And the Dominican Republic. They have something called the Dominican e-ticket.
Yeah, mandatory for everyone entering or leaving.
And that one's kind of interesting. The source says it bundles a few things together.
It does. It acts as your entry card, your exit card, your customs declaration, and a travel health affidavit. All in one digital form you submit.
Wow, okay. That actually sounds pretty efficient, potentially, combining 4 steps into one.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Assuming the tech works smoothly, of course.
Always the catch. The Philippines also has one, a mandatory Philippines e-travel online declaration.
Correct. For all passengers coming in and going out.
And Indonesia, the source lists 2 different things there.
It does. First, there's an e-visa option for short stays for people from certain countries that links back to the e-visa category we talked about. But then, crucially, there's the ECD, the Indonesia Electronic Customs Declaration. The source says that one is mandatory for all travelers entering Indonesia.
Okay, so you might need one or both, depending on your situation.
Seems like it. And finally, Saudi Arabia is mentioned. They require a Saudi Arabia e-visa for foreign citizens traveling for tourism, which you get through an online application. So that fits back in the electronic visa bucket.
Gotcha. And the source just briefly mentions who runs the site, right? The About Us?
Yeah, it just says Visasyst.com is operated by a company called U.S. Vital Documents, LLC, and they have over 10 years of expertise.
Okay. So bringing this all together, what does this really mean for you, the listener?
Well, this source material makes it pretty clear, I think, that figuring out international travel documents now is just, well, it's way more complex than it used to be. It's not just about your passport and maybe a traditional visa anymore. You've got this whole range of specific electronic authorizations, online visa applications, digital declarations.
And they vary so much depending on where you're going.
Massively.
Mm-hmm.
We saw all those different types, the pre-screening ones like ESTA and ETA, the actual online visas like e-visas, and then all those mandatory digital forms for customs or health, like the arrival cards.
And the fact that so many are mandatory before you even leave home really underlines that you need to plan carefully, way in advance sometimes.
Absolutely. And the sheer complexity shown just by this list of countries, it really highlights the problem that a service like the one Visasyst.com describes is trying to solve, acting as a sort of guide or maybe a facilitator through this digital maze of rules.
So, summing up our deep dive into this source material, the big takeaway is that international travel now often involves getting specific digital or electronic documents. Things like those electronic travel authorizations, e-visas, digital arrival cards, departure declarations. They're mandatory, they differ a lot country by country, and you usually need to sort them out online, often well before your trip.
Yeah, that's the reality presented here. And this trend, towards these mandatory digital pre-travel steps based on the examples in this source. It raises an interesting question for you to think about, especially as you plan future trips. How might this global shift, this move towards needing more digital paperwork before you even pack your bags, how might that impact just being able to travel spontaneously? Could knowing exactly what's needed make travel feel more streamlined in the end? Or does it just add another layer of complexity that makes those last-minute getaway ideas much harder to pull off? Something to consider.